In the fall of 1946, Triple Cities College opened as an extension of Syracuse University. 1 year after the end of World War II, the 4-year branch college was expected to welcome servicemen who were returning home and taking advantage of the GI Bill to further their education. Classes were held in Army surplus prefab buildings and outdoor pavilions in the nearby village of Endicott. Men's tennis, men's basketball, and men's track and field were the first sports offered at Triple Cities. Less than 2 years later, local student athlete Joan O'Connor provided an early beacon for women's athletics when she tried out and made the men's tennis team in spring of 1948. Over the next decade, TCC added 4 more men's sports, changed its name to Harper College, and purchased 376 acres of land in Vestal, site of the current campus. During those early years, the activities of the female students centered around tees and balls. Social events, that is, not sports equipment. In 1958, 2 more important events helped shape the opportunities for women's athletics at Binghamton. The first was the construction of the $2.4 million East Gymnasium, which included a swimming pool and basketball court. This facility would wind up being the home for women's athletics on campus for several decades. The other important event in 1958 was the hiring of physical education professor Jessie Godfrey, who began a noted 32-year career on campus and was a pioneer for women's opportunities in sport.
One of the nicest human beings I have ever met is Jessie Godfrey. And she would come to all of our games. She was so proud of how women's sports had grown. We were walking up to the bookstore somewhere, which used to be underneath the library, and she was telling me about women's sports and what they were and how it used to be the women's gym and the men's gym, and then they changed the name to the East Gym and the West Gym. I guess that was a big step. But it was really great just hearing about those incredibly early days where women fought, and I also always recognized that she was the one who got me everything here. She's the reason I got to play sports at Binghamton, or women like her were the reason. And I have a special place in my heart for Jessie.
Female students, as far back as 1946, had pushed for more sports activities on campus, and by the mid-1950s, women were playing recreational basketball, volleyball, and softball. Club teams emerged for archery and equestrian, and courses were offered in modern dance. Godfrey began to hold women's sport group events for basketball, cheerleading, badminton, modern dance, and synchronized swimming. And the school's first Girls Sports Day was staged in spring of 1959 at the new gymnasium, with Harper welcoming SUNY Cortland and Cornell for a basketball competition. The Colonial News, the campus newspaper, reported that the Harper women won the event, unofficially the first intercollegiate victory for women's sports at Binghamton. By the mid-1960s, Godfrey and several female faculty members, including Gladys Walling, had facilities at their disposal, campus interests, and emerging programming on the horizon. Now, the seeds were sown for women to jump into intercollegiate athletics. The first sport to make the jump from club team to intercollegiate status was swimming. 5 women formed the historic first Binghamton women's athletics team in winter of '69. 2 of the student athletes, Judy Finkelstein and Sue Lowenstein, had competed for the club team, coached by Walling in the preceding years. Now, under the leadership of Coach Janet Hill, the new varsity team made its debut.
And even though we were a club, we bonded very early during those first 2 years, and we were very supportive of one another. We morphed from a swim club into a swim team. Even in the phase of being a swim club, from the very start, we were supportive of one another. And there were social issues that some of the women encountered that were upsetting. We had each other to talk to, and basically no one else.
Janet Hill had graduated from SUNY Brockport, and she herself had been a swimmer. So she brought youth and enthusiasm and know-how to swimming and diving. It was a wonderful time for us, and I vividly remember our first practice. The coach said, "Just get in the pool and swim a mile. 72 lengths of the pool, any stroke." Well, I thought I was a swimmer. I learned that I had a long way to go. We were accustomed to being a minor player in athletics at that time. You know, we got the hand-me-down warm-up suits from the men's team, but that was okay with us. We were glad we had a warm-up suit to get into. But by my junior year, we actually got varsity windbreakers like the men's teams did, and we hosted a women's varsity athletic dinner at the end of the year.
Less than a year later, women's tennis was added as a varsity sport, and in the fall of 1971, volleyball became the third women's sport to elevate to varsity status. In 1972, women's athletics gained a huge boost from the passing of federal Title IX legislation, which prohibited gender-based discrimination. Before Title IX went into effect, only 4% of high school athletes were female. That percentage has risen to 43% today. Two prominent coaches began lengthy tenures in the early 1970s, lifting their programs to notable conference and state recognition. In her third year in the department, Jean Mathias took over the volleyball reins and began a successful 19-year run as head coach. And Cooch, who came to Harper in 1963 and was a physical education professor for 37 years, took charge of the women's tennis program. Cooch began an impressive 22-year run that included 10 consecutive SUNYAC Conference championships. Title IX meant more support for women's teams at Binghamton, with better training room care, laundry, and access to facilities and full-time coaching. More sports expansion came in the 1970s, with basketball, cross country, softball, and track earning intercollegiate status, giving Binghamton 6 women's teams. Spearheading the rise of the cross-country and track programs was another long-tenured faculty member, Gary Truce, who was known to fill his early rosters by chasing down runners on campus and in the nearby neighborhoods and inviting them to join his teams.
And I remember driving around campus and finding most of my runners, taking a look at anybody that looked like they might be a jogger at the time, and then I would even stop them right in their tracks or pull up alongside and yell out the window, "Did you ever run track before? Did you ever run cross country?" And most of them said no, they never did. And so I'd say, "Would you want to come out for the cross country team? Would you want to come out for the track team?"
Truce went on to produce 14 All-Americans in his 24-year tenure. In 1984, Godfrey was named president of the SUNYAC, the first female to serve that role in the conference. That same year, the women's soccer club filed a Title IX complaint, and in 1985, that sport gained varsity status. Like the 1970s, the 80s presented challenges across the entire athletics program in funding, and for the women's teams, fan support.
No one really came to the women's games. Your friends would come and a few other people, but women's sports were played in the East Gym, and in the freezing cold and rain and everything else, that seemed awfully far for people to go. Back then, the East Gym had nothing in it, so to go down to the East Gym seemed like a chore for most people.
Binghamton University presents Colonial Sports.
Hi, I'm Joel Thierer. I'm the Director of Physical Education, Recreation, and Athletics at Binghamton University, and I'd like to welcome you to the first sports show about SUNY Binghamton, or Binghamton University Athletics.
The entire athletics program took a dramatic upward turn in 1989 with the hiring of Joel Thierer as Director of Physical Education, Recreation, and Athletics. With the support of then University President Louis DeFleur, Thierer secured reliable funding and full-time coaching, and Binghamton began a steady rise in ranks for both men's and women's sports teams. The 1990s saw national tournament appearances and top 20 national rankings by the women's soccer, volleyball, cross country, basketball, and softball teams. The women's soccer team made 3 trips to the NCAAs and was ranked as high as number 2 in the nation. During that same time, the women's basketball team earned 3 straight NCAA berths, and the softball team advanced 4 straight years.
In the midst of it all, it didn't seem anything necessarily out of the ordinary, other than we'd expected nothing less of ourselves than to do well. But as I've gotten older and I look back, I have such a different perspective on it, and I think time gives that to you.
Meanwhile, on the courts, the women's tennis program was completing an unprecedented run of dominance in the SUNYAC Conference. Under Coach Cooch, the women rattled off 10 consecutive championships between 1988 and 1997, a feat no other tennis program has accomplished in SUNYAC history, before or since. In 1996, the inaugural Athletics Hall of Fame class included 4 elite women, track All-Americans Alice Willis and Crystal Joseph, 3-sport athlete Melissa Cohen, and swimmer Margaret Glanday. Just weeks after the special ceremony, the most decorated Binghamton athlete, male or female, came into the limelight. Gifted track jumper, hurdler, and sprinter Monique Hacker won the first of her school record 5 national titles, and Hacker finished her remarkable career as a 12-time All-American.
I think you can sum Monique up pretty simply. She was the greatest combination of natural talent and competitive drive of any athlete I ever had. She was very gifted, but she also was an intense competitor, and she hated to lose.
With the women leading the way, Binghamton was ranked among the top 15 Division III athletics programs in the country back-to-back years and was now on par with regional rivals SUNY Cortland, Ithaca, and Rochester.
After sporting success at the Division III level, Binghamton University is now going to give it a go at Division II.
In March of 1996, President DeFleur made the historic announcement outlining the university's plan to upgrade to NCAA Division II athletics, with the goal of continuing on to the highest level of competition at Division I.
That this move will enhance our ability to recruit students, to recruit student athletes. It will enhance our national visibility. It will strengthen our community ties.
Well known in that moment was the pivotal role played by the department's nationally successful women's programs.
There is no doubt that the women's programs throughout the 90s really began to dominate. They had great command of the SUNYAC conference. It wasn't just women's soccer, it was women's basketball, women's volleyball, and softball. We all were really dominating within the SUNYAC, and ultimately, I don't think I'm alone in feeling that it was the success of the women's programs and that domination that really catapulted Binghamton and provided the strong foundation for the divisional move to Division I. I don't think without that female success we would have been able to make that move as successfully.
The short stay in Division II wasn't without its achievements, as Binghamton joined fellow SUNY schools Albany and Stony Brook in the New England Collegiate Conference, and proceeded to win the all-sports title in 1999, further demonstrating the university's readiness for Division I. The transition to Division I also included a nickname change from Colonials to Bearcats, and groundbreaking for the $33.1 million event center, which opened in January of 2004. 16 years later, the Event Center continues to serve as a breathtaking showpiece for the entire athletics department. The university's first victory as a Division I program didn't come on a field, court, or track, however, but came in the boardroom.
It is my pleasure to announce today that Binghamton University has accepted an offer to become the 9th member of the America East Conference, effective with the upcoming academic year.
After an aggressive campaign for membership, Binghamton found a conference home when the America East formally accepted the university on April 18, 2001. That previous fall of 2000, another important announcement was made when the university hired Annette Acuff as its new cross-country coach and assistant track coach. Acuff began what is now the longest tenure of any female coach in Binghamton history, now completing her 20th year in 2019-20. During that 2 decades-long run, she has established herself as a preeminent coach of distance runners, and her athletes have compiled 7 All-America honors, in addition to a pair of America East titles.
I've certainly seen a lot of positive change, a lot of growth, a lot of success within all of the women's sport teams at Binghamton, and that's been really exciting for me to be a part of that.
The women's soccer team was the first BU team to compete in Division I when they defeated Duquesne 4-1 on August 31, 2001. That following February of 2002, the women's lacrosse team made its historic varsity debut after serving years as a club team. The addition of the women's and men's lacrosse teams gave Binghamton its current total of 21 sports, 10 of which were women's offerings. The 2004 women's soccer team was the first women's team to win a Division I conference title, and advanced to the NCAA tournament, and the volleyball team duplicated that feat the next fall, the first of 3 crowns Coach Kiriyama raised with his program. The Division I first continued that spring as swimmer Wing Chu became the first Binghamton All-American during the Division I era when she placed 13th in the 200 butterfly at the NCAA championships. Meanwhile, administrative initiatives brought a steady spotlight to athletics. On February 1, 2006, the department hosted its inaugural luncheon and fundraiser to benefit women's athletics. This event drew national attention for its unique purpose, and 14 years later, the 2020 event drew a record crowd of more than 800 guests and continues to feature inspiring speakers and critical fundraising initiatives.
Don't forget, you would be no one and then have made it nowhere without Mom. Give her the world's biggest hug and understand that she gave you the world and more growing up. And if it wasn't for her, you wouldn't be you.
It's such a feel-good event, and when people come here for the first time, they come back. And I've had people say to me, you know, I'm so inspired by all of your speakers, especially your student athletes. I had no idea that all this went on here at Binghamton University Athletics. And it's good. It's good for us to get the exposure, and it's good for people to see the importance of their support.
New facilities continue to offer the best opportunities for women and men to train and showcase their talents. In 2007, Binghamton christened the new Bearcat Sports Complex, which featured 2 turf soccer and lacrosse fields with a press box. Now, 4 more BU teams had an elite practice and competition home. The tennis and softball programs each received a huge boost in 2012 with the construction of new complexes for each sport. That spring, softball hosted the America East Championship at its beautiful and spacious facility, the first of 5 times that Binghamton would be awarded the host softball role. Appropriately, at the leadership forefront of securing and running those successful conference tournaments was a former softball player and now 16-year administrator, Leanne Savage Morris. Morris has the unique distinction of being a Bearcat student athlete and now the department's senior woman administrator, and everything in between. Of anyone, she knows how the student-athlete experience has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades.
The student-athletes today have so much more on their plates than what I had. In reality, sport is almost easy. They still deal with the same, anxiety. You don't want to be embarrassed on the field. You're worrying about playing time. You're worrying about, letting people down. You're worrying about an injury. I hate to say, that's kind of the easy part. It's the rest of their world, which is very different.
With outstanding facilities, competitive programs, and strong leadership from current Director of Athletics, Patrick Elliott, Binghamton has been a frequent host for America East tournaments in numerous sports, and welcomed the entire conference for the 2015 and 2016 Women's Basketball Championships. In fall of 2016, the athletics program recorded another first when freshman swimmer Sydney Attenito came to campus from East Aurora, New York, some 32 years after her mom, Marisa Villarini, was a member of the first women's soccer varsity team at Binghamton. This mother-daughter tandem shares a special pride in Binghamton women's athletics.
The level that Binghamton is it's competitive enough, but also I can take my academics seriously, which I like the balance between it. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, I think things have certainly come a long way from, 85 when I was playing soccer.
Jessie Godfrey and the early pioneers who pushed for women's rights on campus and in the athletics arena would be proud to see the progress.
The one thing that I think has really remained constant that over the years that I would say has been, really, it's been great to witness and experience has just been that, I think all of our, student athletes have had just such a great experience at Binghamton. And so that I think I'm very proud of.
In its 50-year history, women's athletics at Binghamton is a tale of humble beginnings, a spirited climb to prominence, and an exciting future. From our original 5 swimmers to the now 1,500 who have worn colonial and Bearcat green, we salute you for your inspiring leadership, your steadfast resolve, and your unparalleled success. Happy 50th anniversary.
Awesome, thank you.
Good job.